Hello everyone, welcome to our course International Organization and Global Governance, Chapter 4, Historical Background, Early Development and the League of Nations. At the end of this chapter, you will be able to explain the historical origins of international organization. You can assess the development of institutionalization in the 19th century international politics, and also you can explain the rise of modern international organizations and the importance of the Hague Conferences. And finally, you will be able to analyze the failure and the success of the League of Nations. So this chapter includes four main titles. The first title is the historical origins of the international organizations. The second title is the 19th century international system and the development of institutionalization. The third main title considers the rise of modern international organizations and the Hague Conferences. And finally, the chapter focuses on a new beginning, the League of Nations. The first topic in this chapter is the historical origins of the international organizations. First of all, we know that the historical origins of international organizations can be traced back to the Peace of Westphalia, because in 1648, the Peace of Westphalia in international relations is considered as the beginning of the modern international system, and it created some significant principles which became the basis of the later or the future international organizations in the 18th, 19th and 20th centuries. These are, for instance, first of all, the first importance of the Peace of Westphalia is that in Peace of Westphalia, states were recognized as sovereign and equal to each other. So state sovereignty and equality are important principles which will be as the basis, as the foundation of international organizations. Second, we know that the territorial borders were recognized. This is important, so the equal units of the international system emerged. And finally, diplomacy and the Congress system became some sort of institutional instruments which help to manage interstate relations. Of course, after the Peace of Westphalia, there was no international organization or international body, permanent or standing international body, but diplomacy and the Congress system were institutionalized, in other words, as a means of international relations. In 18th century international system, we know that the war was used as a means of achieving some sort of state interest, but these are very limited wars because still the international system was a monarchical system. It was based on kinship and monarchical relations in Europe. So no state was able to dominate the international system. There were some sort of challengers, but they failed to dominate the international system. And finally, and also conflicts, generally international conflicts, they were related to royal issues. So we know that there were some major conflicts, such as the Spanish Succession War or the Austrian Succession War. So these conflicts emerged from the royal or monarchical issues between different monarchies. And also in the 18th century, the Congress system was sustained as a solution of problems. So there were some sort of ad hoc congresses in order to solve these common problems or international problems. When we came to the Congress of Vienna, we know that the French Revolution and the Napoleonic Wars were major blows to the international system, modern international system that was created after the Peace of Westphalia and that was sustained since then. So these are some sort of challengers, significant threats, which took the international system to the brink of collapse in the beginning of the 19th century. However, the Congress of Vienna, after the defeat of Napoleon, was convened in 1815 in order to restore the old European system. And we know that there are three important alliances. The first one is the Holy Alliance, and the second one is the Quadruple Alliance. The first alliance included Russia, Prussia, and Austria. The third one also includes, in addition to these three states, the second one also Britain. So these are the significant alliances which provided some sort of organizational structure for the international system after the Congress of Vienna. There was still no international organization for the international peace and security, but there are some sort of institutionalization at the European level. So another topic is the 19th century international system and the development of institutionalization. In 19th century, in European politics is characterized by the concert of Europe, which was created after in the Congress of Vienna. We define the international system or international or European politics as the concert of Europe. This was a new European order, which was based on still monarchical relations, but this new European order provided some basis for future organizations. So the concert of Europe is a concert among great powers of international relations. So great powers acted in a harmony with each other while solving some problems according to the principles that they agreed on in the Congress of Vienna. So particularly the concert of Europe successfully functioned in the first half of the 19th century. And there are three mechanisms of the concert of Europe. Quadruple alliance, which I just mentioned, created by Russia, Prussia, England and Austria. And also there are periodical congresses in order to solve these problems. This periodical congress system as a mechanism of mediation and peace building in the 19th century. So there is some sort of institutionalization here. And also there are some rules and norms created out of European public law, which supported and contributed to international law and international institutionalization in the 19th century. In the second half of the 19th century, we know that the concert of Europe was in decline, but still there were some sort of congresses, significant international meetings, which sustained some sort of international balance of power in Europe. The first one is the Paris Congress and the second one is the Berlin Congress, and these congresses are important for the creation of new international organizations as well. And the first international organization or international institution was created at the Paris Conference in 1856. It was the International Danube River Commission, and it was created among different states in order to deal with the issues related to the river Danube. We know that in the 19th century there were also other international public unions, because the international trade, international commerce developed, and also international communication and transportation grew in the late 18th century and in the beginning of 19th century. So these developments, these commercial and communicative developments in the field of communication and transportation paved the way for the creation of some international public unions. First group of international public unions were created in order to deal with the international trade and commerce. Metric Union, for instance, can be considered as an example. Also, we know that International Copyright Union were created in order to deal with the copyright issues again. And also there's another group of international public unions which were created in order to deal with the communication and transportation around the world. The Universal Postal Union or Telegraphic Union or the Universal Union for Transportation. These were the examples of this second type. And also in the late 19th century and at the beginning of the 18th century, two significant international meetings were held, which was a significant development in terms of the international organizations. With regard to international organizations, the first one is the first Hague Conference, which was convened in May 1899 in order to deal with a collective problem, the issue of armament. there were some conferences and international meetings we just mentioned briefly. These were international meetings in order to deal with some specific conflicts. For instance, in order to deal with the results of the Congress of Vienna was convened in order to deal with the results of the Napoleonic Wars. So a specific conflict was the topic of those meetings. But in this meeting, there was a general problem. So the issue armament, or the problem of disarmament, we can call. The aim is to create or to deal with is this general problem, a common problem, collectively. So that's why the first Hague Conference is considered as the first global event, because it's included 26 states, not only from Europe, but also from other continents as well. This is a new happening, because previous conferences and international meetings only included European actors, European great powers, and European other states. But for the first time in international history, at the first Hague Conference, there were some states from other parts of the world. For instance, 20 states from Europe, 4 states from Asia, and 2 states from Americas. This is important. And there are important outcomes with regard to the international organizations. First of all, the participants adopted the Convention of Pacific Settlement of International Controversies. This is an important document which was creating the principle, the UN principle of Pacific settlement of international disputes, for instance. And also there was the codification of previously accepted rules about land and naval warfare. This is important. So states are creating some new rules and institutionalize some new rules, norms regarding fighting wars. And also the most significant, the major significant outcome of the first Hague Conference was the creation of International Court of Arbitration. After the first Hague Conference, the second Hague Conference was held in 1907, and this time 44 states participated in the second Hague Conference, and that's why it's considered as the first World Congress. And despite some sort of great expectations, in fact, the results of the second Hague Conference were disappointing, but still they made some progress on arbitration, and they made some progress on creation and codification of rules related to warfare. There's another topic, the League of Nations, which was established after the end of the First World War. And of course, there is an impact of the First World War on the creation of these new organizations. We know that at the end of the war, the European dominance over the international system ended, and we know that the United Nations emerged as the new powerful actor. And also the war showed that the existing mechanisms of European diplomacy were ineffective. So there is a need for new institutions and mechanisms. And also the US President Woodrow Wilson announced his 14 points for the post-war settlements for the future world after the war. And these 14 points included some sort of statements or US policies regarding the different issues. One of the policies was the creation of an international organization, a universal organization for the maintenance of international peace. So this is important. This created the basis. So when they came to Paris Peace Conference, so each powerful state, Britain, France, United States, and Italy, other victorious states of the war, welcomed this idea of creating a new international organization. So the League of Nations, then the covenant of the League of Nations was drafted at the Paris Peace Conference. Of course, they welcomed the idea, but the mandate and the scope of the new organization were subject to a great debate between these major actors. Finally, they adopted the covenant, and it was the League of Nations Nations was officially created in January 1920 as part of the Versailles Treaty, and the Geneva became its headquarters, and the Sir Eric James Dermot became its first Secretary General. When we look at the organizational structure of the League of Nations, there are three principal organs of the League. The first one is the Assembly. This was the one of the main organs of the League, and it was the main deliberative body. All member states were equally represented in this body, and each state had only one vote, and also each state can send 1 to 3 representatives to the assembly. The second principal organ of the League was the Council. It was responsible for the maintenance of peace, and only 7 states were members of the council. 4 states were permanent members, such as England, France, Japan, and Italy, and 2 states are non-permanent members. They were elected by the assembly for 3 years. And also the Secretariat is the third principal body of the League of Nations. It included the Secretary General and the staff. They were responsible for the administrative affairs of the League. When we look at the performance of the League, how the League performed in the interwar years, the 1920s was its heyday, its golden age, because it solved several territorial disputes. So before the 1929 Great Depression, we consider that the League was successful in achieving and in showing some progress in solving international problems collectively. But starting from the 1930, League faced significant challenges, international challenges, and the first major challenge came from one of the permanent members of the Council, from Japan. Japan invaded Manchuria, part of China, and created some sort of puppet state there. And this was the first major crisis that the League failed to solve. So, failed to prevent the Japanese aggression in China. The second aggression, or the second problem, came from a revisionist country and also member of the Council, the Italian invasion of Ethiopia, Abyssinia in 1935. This was also a major blow to the collective security and the League of Nations, because League again failed to solve these problems. Of course, the League of Nations tried to solve these problems, but it was lack of the support from some major actors such as Britain and France. By the mid-30s, its effectiveness increased because it failed to prevent the remilitarization of the Ruhr region, remilitarization of Germany. It was ineffective to prevent some sort of revisionist policies of Germany in Europe, such as in Czechoslovakia, in Poland. So officially, we know that, for instance, when Germany invaded Poland, there was no submission to the League of Nations, because all major actors considered that the League of Nations is ineffective. So in the end, in April 1946, just after the war, it officially ceased to exist. So in this chapter, we first focus on the historical origins of the international organizations. Then we move to consider the 19th century international system and the development of institutionalization. And we also consider the rise of modern international organizations and the Hague Conferences. And finally, we discuss the League of Nations. Thank you very much for joining me today.